And I've said this a million times. It's soft because everybody's doing the same thing.
Of all of your opinions, that take about it's all three-point shooting has spread for months.
That's certainly, this is a scoring team, but they also give up a lot of points from downtown. SGA step back magic.
RJ with 5 attempts and getting back to that baseline mid-range so smooth.
I think the other side of it, though, I want to give credit to the guys that are still playing it the way we like.
The type of player I want to be when it's all said and done plays both sides of the floor. My favorite players have always done that, and that is, to me, it comes with it. It comes with winning. It comes with championships.
Thank you! As I'm sure you guys know, when it comes to the MVP award every single year, it's divisive among fans, coaches, the media, even players themselves. And looking at the past 6 years, the MVP has been dominated by solely big men. That being Nikola Jokic, who's won 3 out of the last 4, Joel Embiid, who has 1, and Giannis, of course, has 2.
Giannis. Oppa.
It is pretty ironic in the small ball era, the pace and space era, the guys who win MVP are all big men. As looking at our last non-center MVP, that was James Harden back in 2018. And before him, Russell Westbrook in 2017. And one guy I think can do the same this year is actually SGA. And just like Russ and James Harden, play for the Thunder as well as the Clippers.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And look, when it comes to winning MVP, there's no defined criteria, no bullet points, where it's laid out, boom, bam, gotta do this stuff, check that box, check that box. There's no defined criteria. But for an MVP, I mean, most times, great numbers, great value, your team's winning, and also, you gotta have a hook, something to grab the voters, and grab the fans, and push them in your favor. And for SGA, his hook is pretty simple. As looking at OKC right now, they have the best record in the West, second best record in the NBA. And they're doing that minus Chet. You can look at various eras, various MVPs. When a superstar player puts up great numbers, has great value, and his second best player is out, the majority of times that player gets a boost and some added attention. Whether it be Joker in 2022 minus Jamal Murray, or Jordan 98 minus Scottie Pippen. And looking at OKC minus Chet, they're not just surviving, keeping their head above water, they're thriving and haven't skipped a beat. As since Chet went out versus the Warriors Oklahoma City, is a staggering 18-3, having won 12 straight and 16-17. And looking at SGA in that stretch, 33 points per game, 5.8 dimes, 5.5 boards, 2.1 steals, 1.2 blocks on 54% shooting. And cherry on top, he is a plus 13 on average in the plus minus department.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal.
I mean, that right there, it just screams MVP. The stats, the numbers, the defensive impact, of course the winning, but also the added hook of Chet not being healthy and the team not skipping a beat. And look, let's be very, very clear. SGA compared to Giannis and the Joker, I don't think he's a better overall player. But in terms of being the MVP, SGA this year checks more boxes than both those guys. As looking at the advanced numbers, the analytics, in terms of overall value, SGA this year is first in overall win shares, first in defensive win shares, first in VORP win shares per 48, and first in defensive box plus minus. I mean, in terms of overall value advanced metrics, SGA right now is absolutely killing it. And the counting stats, the casual stats, I mean, 31, 6, and 5, second in scoring, second in steals. I mean, the numbers, top to bottom, they're there. The winning's there. It's the complete full body resume of an MVP.
I rest my case.
And one thing you might say is that, well, SGA could get hurt, get injured. He could miss some time, not win the award. And of course, that is true, that could happen. It's still very, very early on. But looking at his track record this year and last year in total, has missed only 7 games. As of late, SGA rarely ever gets hurt or sits out games if he's not actually injured. And of course, in this era, that's a big time plus that has to be taken into account.
Write that down, write that down!
Now, also one thing you must take into account, in this era, being a great defender, even above average defender, isn't really factored in and valued by the majority of NBA fans. Because of course, defense, it can't really be put on a stat sheet quantified by numbers. It's more of an eye test thing. You have to watch the games. Now, even with that being said, SGA's offensive game among high volume guard scorers. Among those guys still in the top 1%. Is he better than Luka scoring wise? You know, you might say Luka's a better overall scorer. But in terms of the most elite guard scorers, what separates SGA from all of them? On defense, he also shows up. And looking at that list right there among high volume guard scorers, you have SGA, LaMelo, Luka, Fox, Maxey, Brunson, and then Dame. That is the top 7 players in guard scoring per game. SGA compared to those guys, not only the better defender, but also the much more efficient player. So taking all that into account, SGA's scoring ability being efficient, but also the defense. That right there is a separator and makes SGA an elite NBA player and a future MVP.
More than halfway left to go in this fourth quarter. Edwards collapsed on. Lost the dribble there. 2-on-1. Spencer. Pressure by SGA. Too much.
35 points. The Grizzlies just 14. Keep in mind the Grizzlies lead the NBA in points.
So looking at SGA's defense right there, I mean, one of the rare players in this era, one of the rare players in NBA history, who can give you 30 and lock down their matchup. In this era among guard players, I mean, yes, you have a Devin Booker or Anthony Edwards who can do similar things. But Book at this point, kind of stuck in basketball hell, and Ant doesn't really have the stamina experience on someone like SGA's level. And if you want to compare Ant versus SGA, one big time separator, not only their motors, but also being consistent. As looking at his 4 worst shooting games this season, all under 40% from the field. After all those games the very next day, he bounced back in a big time way. 35% versus the Spurs, the next game shot nearly 70. 35% versus the Warriors, the next game versus the Clippers, above 60%. 37% versus the Blazers, the next game 65%. 38% versus Houston, the next game versus Orlando, 58%. I mean, that right there is a big time indicator of being a star player versus being a superstar, a great player versus an all-time great player. If you have an off night, a bad shooting night, how do you respond and bounce back? Does it continue going for 2-3 games a week, maybe a month, or does it stop right then and there? For SGA thus far, it always stops after one bad game. And again, talking being consistent, during the 16-1 stretch minus Chet, only 1 game below 25 points, 3 games above 40, 6 games 35 plus points, and 4 games of 30 or more. The only time he failed to crack 25 points was versus the Hornets in a blowout victory when he shot 15 times. So once again, a great two-way player who's consistent, always shows up, and if he has a bad night, responds immediately.
Most impressive.
And one last thing I do want to say regarding SGA's scoring ability, I mean, this dude scores effortlessly with ease, just makes it look plain and simple. And if you're a fan of guys like Kobe, a Jordan, a Kawhi, Kevin Durant, the guys the mid-range kings, kind of the pull-up kings, someone like SGA should be must-see TV, as unlike a lot of superstar players, he's not chucking threes 24/7.
Most of the time.
That'll be a little more. In about a minute to put Minnesota back up by 12. Not in the mix. Free throw jumper.
Perfection.
And looking at SGA's overall numbers in the mid-range, among qualifiers taking at least 100 shots in the mid-range, this guy ranks first in overall percentage at 53.8%. And looking at that list, only 2 other players even crack 50%. That of course being Booker, as well as Kevin Durant.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
In today's NBA, having an in-between game, the mid-range game, it's invaluable for your team, especially in the postseason. As come playoff time, what happens over and over again? Teams close out hard and run you off the three-point line. So when that happens, what do? If you have no mid-range game, either passing the ball or taking contested layup. But for someone like SGA, he can pump fake 1-2 dribbles, pull up, get a midi. I understand 3/2, the mid-range is dead, all that nonsense. But come playoff time, having that in your back pocket is extremely valuable. And looking at the overall data once again, SGA on pull-up 2-point shots, this guy is simply absurd. In attempts, he ranks second, and overall percentage ranks first at 54.5%. If you're someone like myself, you value defense, mid-range shooting, a great well-rounded game, SGA is that guy you should be watching 24/7. As on defense, he shows up, scoring wise, and he always shows up, and he's highly efficient. So that right there is the end of the video, and once again SGA, for me personally, must-see TV, my favorite players to watch on a daily basis. And for OKC fans, I think this year finally, we're going to get over the hump and make the finals. And the process SGA will get his first of hopefully many MVPs. As always, thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.